There's something that happens when a book becomes iconic. It gets flattened, smoothed out, filed down to something easier to sell on a tote bag. And no book suffers from this more than Wuthering Heights, because somewhere along the line people started calling this the greatest love story ever told. And every time I hear that, I have the same reaction. I blink, I pause, and I wonder if we read the same book. Because Wuthering Heights is not a love story. It's a gothic horror story about obsession, cruelty, trauma, revenge, and the long shadow of emotional damage that poisons everyone it touches. It's about selfish, horrible people doing selfish, horrible things to each other for generations. And the fact that people call it romantic is probably one of the most strange misunderstandings in literary history. I'm Darv James. I'm being pretentious. Like, sub, tell me what you think in the comments below. And if you want to support this channel, check out Substack, Patreon, channel memberships, Ko-fi, all of the usual jazz, right? So let's talk about Heathcliff. Heathcliff is probably one of the most iconic characters ever written. Not for the right reasons that people think. He's brooding, dark, emotionally intense. He stands on cliffs and stares into storms like he personally invented sadness. Which sounds romantic until you remember what he actually does. He hurts people. He manipulates them. He emotionally destroys an entire family because he can't process his own pain. He weaponizes love. And the thing is, Emily Brontë doesn't hide it. She doesn't soften him. She introduces him as someone unsettling from the very beginning. Heathcliff isn't born into the family he's found. Discovered wandering the streets of Liverpool. Liverpool at the time was one of the busiest ports in the world. Port of trade, poverty, movement, displacement. He has no known origin, no known family, no known history. That's a mouthful of a sentence. He's described as dark hair, heavy brows, dark eyes, but also described as white as the wall behind him at one point. He's sometimes described as foreign. There's been long speculation that he may have been a traveller. Some kind of background like that. And that ambiguity matters. Because Heathcliff enters the family not as a son, but as an intrusion, a disruption, a living embodiment of the unknown. And that's the point why he's ambiguous. And from the moment he arrives, everything begins to rot. Then you have Catherine. Let's talk about her. Because adaptations love to soften her. They turn her into some romantic, tragic heroine. She's not. Catherine is selfish. She's cruel. She's emotionally reckless and manipulative. She loves Heathcliff, yes, but she refuses to marry him because it would lower her social status. She literally says it would degrade her. So instead, she marries the other guy. Not because she loves him more, but because he's safe. Comfortable. Respectable. And this decision destroys everyone, including herself. Catherine doesn't just break Heathcliff's heart, she fractures reality. Because Heathcliff doesn't move on, he doesn't heal, he decays. He becomes something else. Something colder, something crueler. Something that exists purely to make others suffer the way that he suffered. This isn't romance, this is emotional corrosion. People also forget this, but Wuthering Heights is very literally a ghost story. Not metaphorically, literally. The novel opens with Lockwood encountering the ghost of Cathy at the window. Her hands scraping at the glass, begging to be let in. "I'm Catherine, I've come home." And it's terrifying, not romantic, terrifying. Because the house itself is haunted. Wuthering Heights isn't just a setting, it's a psychological space. It's claustrophobic, it's oppressive, closed off from the rest of the world. The moors surrounding it are vast and beautiful, but they're also isolating. You do not escape the moors, you get lost in them. They swallow you, they move. And the house becomes a pressure chamber for generational trauma. Pain doesn't disappear here. It lingers, it festers, it passes from parent to child like inheritance. This is the part adaptations nearly always cut, and it drives me insane. Because the real story of Wuthering Heights isn't Heathcliff and Cathy. It's what comes after them, it's the children. The next generation forced to live inside the wreckage of the previous one. Heathcliff, unable to hurt Catherine anymore, turns his cruelty towards her daughter. And, well, towards anyone he can control. He becomes the architect of suffering, not because he enjoys it, but because he doesn't know how to exist without it. This is what trauma does when it isn't confronted. It replicates, it spreads, it teaches others what it is. And yet, something unexpected happens. The cycle breaks, or begins to break. Not through Heathcliff, but through the children. Through kindness, through learning, connection. Those choosing something different. And that's the real love story of Wuthering Heights. Not obsession, not possession, not destruction, but healing. Adaptations always try to turn this into a romance, because romance sells. Romance is comfortable, romance is safe. But Wuthering Heights isn't safe. Some adaptations even lean into this strange, uncomfortable vibe. They frame Heathcliff as a tortured romantic anti-hero. They frame Catherine as his soulmate. And suddenly it starts to feel like 50 Shades of Grey on the moors. Look at the most recent adaptation. All intensity, none of the horror. But Emily Brontë wasn't writing a romance, she was writing about obsession as a form of physical, physical punishment and psychological imprisonment. Heathcliff doesn't love Cathy in a healthy way. He consumes her. He defines himself entirely through her existence, and he cannot exist without her. And when she dies, he doesn't move forward. He erodes. He stops eating. He stops caring for himself. He becomes a ghost long before he dies. This isn't romantic. This is annihilation. The ending is quiet, almost disturbingly peaceful. Heathcliff dies, and he's buried alongside Catherine and her husband. Not in a romantic reunion. Not in some triumphant romantic gesture. Just buried. Side by side. Lockwood visits their grave. And he looks out across the moors and wonders how anyone could unrest beneath this calm earth. But there are stories of two figures wandering the moors together. Ghosts still roaming, still unable to leave, still bound to each other, not because it's beautiful, but because neither of them ever learnt how to let go. That's not romantic, that's haunting. Wuthering Heights challenged Victorian morality in ways that were shocking at the time. It depicted emotional abuse, psychological cruelty, class resentment, social rigidity, obsession, madness. It refused to moralize and it refused to comfort. It simply showed what happens when pain is left to grow unchecked. And even now it feels modern. Because we still romanticize unhealthy love. We still confuse intensity with intimacy. We still mistake possession for devotion. We still tell ourselves that suffering makes something more real. But Emily Brontë understood something that most people don't. Love, when twisted by ego, Insecurity and trauma become something else entirely. Something destructive. Something inescapable. Something that haunts and hurts. Now, and maybe that's why people keep calling it a love story. Because calling it horror would mean recognising parts of ourselves in it. It would mean admitting that obsession isn't beautiful, the cruelty isn't passion, that pain isn't proof of love. It would mean admitting that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't the ones that burn the brightest. They're the ones that survive, the ones that heal, the ones that chose kindness instead of control. And these stories don't belong to Heathcliff and Cathy. They belong to the ones who came after, the ones who escaped the house, the ones who stepped out into the moors and didn't look back.